silver is going to outpace gold in that next bull run. It doesn't mean gold or silver go in a straight line. You could say silver's broken a lot of hearts, but if you bought it at 15 or 20 or 30, are you not entertained? Even with the pullback, $300 silver, $400 silver, these aren't exaggerations. If you're playing the long game and you're not trading, it's just a question of when, because the fundamentals for the monetary system and for paper currencies haven't changed. It's a long answer to a short question, but the short answer is we're very bullish on silver.
He sees a new reality of between $300 and $500 very quickly, possibly this summer.
Silver is no longer just the cheaper version of gold. It is increasingly seen as a key monetary and industrial metal with a long-term supply crunch looming. Recent industry figures show China's largest monthly imports of silver, reflecting strong retail investment demand and strong industrial demand, particularly from solar panel manufacturing in anticipation of policy changes. Meanwhile, the Silver Institute and Metal Focus World Silver Survey 2026 are predicting global supply to decline 2% in 2026. While mine production stagnates and recycling decreases, putting pressure on a tight market. In such a climate, some analysts are predicting a wild upside. Andy Schectman has pondered the long-term possibility of silver hitting $300 to $500 given continuing deficits and physical demand outstripping paper markets. Likewise, Matthew Piepenburg sees $300 silver as not if but when given monetary uncertainties and structural problems in future markets are driven real price discovery upwards. Let's explore today's video for some insights. Make sure to like, comment, and follow the channel so you do not miss anything.
A lot of us in the space are very bullish on silver. And of course, we have a bias. And of course, we have a conviction. I think when you're talking about silver, whether you're talking about any commodity or you're talking about precious metals, it's a different answer depending on the audience, depending on what kind of investor they are, whether they're swing trading or they're traders or they're long-term investors, they're wealth preservationists. What is their time horizon? Is it a month, a quarter, a trading day, an hour? Is it 20 years? So it's a different answer depending on who's listening in a sense. But of course, at Von Greyerz, we're purely wealth preservation. We've been that for decades, and that's not going to change. We understand silver as the mama metal is gold and the baby metal is silver. It has a much better beta when gold's on a bull run. But we look at silver and gold as monetary metals, and we look at them as wealth preservation tools. And so our horizon is many, many years. So I have to caveat by saying that, because I think if you're trading or arbitraging or spread trading it, even the best traders I've seen in this space, I know a lot of them aren't very successful because there is a lot of volatility based on headlines and price moves and commodities in general, and silver in particular, with all the mechanizations in the COMEX market starting in 24, which I've written about a lot. But I think at 30,000 feet, keep it simple, stupid, because we understand it as a simple long-term play. I mean, silver is a supply and demand mismatch that has a fantastic setup if you're patient and you have a longer time horizon. And for me, again, silver has seen 5 consecutive years of 200 million ounce supply deficits. And, by Silver Friday of this January, we were looking at $1 billion in silver deficits. And that supply crunch with that demand rising is a perfect setup longer term. We saw the LBMA seize up last October. There just wasn't enough metals to meet delivery. In New York, on the New York Exchange, whatever you think of it, and gosh knows I don't think very highly of it, you had a ratio of, the COMEX's registered silver, that's available silver for delivery, versus the open interest, which was the paper claim demand for delivery. You had a ratio of 7-to-1. At some point, and again, regardless of whether you're bullish or bearish or cynical or not, that supply and demand mismatch has to play out in normal price discovery, despite all the mechanizations we've seen on the COMEX, really since Trump was elected in November of 24 and into the first year of his term. The mechanizations we saw in December of 2025, and then again in January on Silver Friday when they were raising the margin hikes, all these efforts to manipulate the silver price because they had to raise margins because they didn't have enough actual physical gold to lever the paper price. So it was a fascinating moment. And I think these exchanges are really pacing towards a cash settlement only exchange.
The COMEX and the CME group, I think, are losing trust, and you can see that by the precipitous drawdown that we continue to see, the deliveries, and many of these deliveries being sent out of the COMEX. We talked about in February, 39 million ounces left COMEX, but only 26 million ounces were delivered that month. So 160% of what deliveries could explain alone left the building. Now, again, there is still a couple days left, but here again, this is something we've been seeing every single month, where the open interest dwarfs the amount of silver that could be delivered behind it. And it's getting late in the cycle, where there's only 3 days left before these delivery notices come out. Something to keep an eye on for sure. We saw the price of silver get hammered in February and in March, yet we saw unprecedented January and February and March, unprecedented demand for silver imports into China, 78% over a month-to-month pattern. So in other words, surging almost 80% month over month to a record 836 tons in March, which was 173% above the 10-year seasonal average. That was the all-time high in March. February was the all-time high before the March numbers beat the February numbers. So as the price of silver got clobbered, February and March back-to-back were the two biggest imports numbers into China of silver in the history of import records. So here again, they've already imported 1,626 tons, the highest level on record. So in 2025, China was a net exporter of silver. In 2026, they are now a net importer of silver. In November of 2025, they came out and said, we are the second largest producer of silver in the world. We will not be sending any of our domestic stockpile out into the global market. And then in January, kind of pushing back against the classification of silver as a critical mineral, they came out and said, we will start to curtail exporting. They're one of the largest refiners of doré bar in the world. And so here you see, coinciding with a slowdown in exports, not going to send out any of their domestic consumption. They imported more in January, February, March, back to back, higher than they ever have before. And I think when we look at the pullback that we saw recently, where silver is just massively underpriced in the respect that the pull down in the price of silver, according to the Bank of International Settlements, was completely, certainly wasn't fundamental whatsoever. It was more structural. BIS said it was totally structural, where you had the rebalancing of the levered ETFs that happens the first or second week in January every year. It's notorious to see all sorts of volatility in all kinds of commodities and indices, because these ETFs, as a mandate to their prospectus, must rebalance after weeks and weeks and weeks in December and January, November and December, of silver continuing to go higher every week unabated. These ETFs, these massively levered ETFs, got way out of whack according to their prospectus. So they had to be rebalanced, along with the margin increases of 300%. Was a synthetic orchestrated collapse by the CME group. The worst time to raise margins when you have rebalancing of the ETFs. And that's kind of what the letter said that the BIS put out. And that's why you're seeing, I think, banks like in Switzerland who came out and said, I forgot the name of the bank. It's one of the big ones, but it's not UBS. It's not a name you hear very often, but they came out and said, we sold into the structural decline and bought back once we realized it was not fundamental. You're beginning to see, I think, the realization that this was an orchestrated collapse. And when you look at it that way and then see during that collapse that China imported more 2 months in a row, really 3 months in a row, than it ever before, and become a net importer, it's a big deal. It becomes an even bigger deal when you realize that the margin increases flushed out all of the speculative froth. It also flushed out a lot of speculation in the retail industry, which really isn't driving this market, but yet a lot of people freaked out and sold. And I think the bottom line here is that what you are seeing or witnessing in real time is a very strong base being built under those who are holding metal right now. The speculation is not there. It is the people holding it for the correct reasons and will I think, provide a very stable, solid base for the next leg up. I think that's a big deal, something to certainly consider.
Stagflation fears a stagnate economy and high inflation are resurgent as inflation expectations are again on the rise. Economic indicators continue to reveal inflation about central bank targets and uneven growth, while energy prices remain high, contributing to higher interest rates across the curve. The result in tighter liquidity and already has placed pressure on precious and base metals. At the same time, supply constraints, particularly for silver, continue to burden the market, while reports such as the World Silver Survey 2026 indicating persistent supply deficits and flatlining mine production. As Andy Schectman notes, this situation underscores a disconnect between paper pricing and the physical world. In such short-term price fluctuations may reflect market positioning more than the actual supply. Like Matthew Piepenburg, see growing debt and sustained inflation as gradually eroding confidence in fiat currencies, making the long-term argument for hard assets like gold and silver as insurance against monetary risk stronger. Now let's jump straight into the content.
It's interesting. The article went on to say that the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget estimates that just a 1% rise in interest rates on the 10-year Treasury from an average of 4.3 to 5.3 would add about $3.5 trillion to the U.S. debt over the decade. We are at that point where these numbers are getting to be very, very, very big and very troublesome. And those people who say that the debt doesn't matter to the United States are missing a very big picture. And that's why you're seeing rates go higher, because countries are selling treasuries, which is very unusual because every war that we've ever seen that involved oil, which raises the CPI, which raises inflation, would say, just like we're seeing right now, the fact we can't raise rates. We certainly, we can't do that because, or we can't lower rates rather, because, the inflation is heating up so much. If we lower rates, you're going to reignite and add fuel to the inflation fire. And therefore gold and silver can't go higher. It's just a stupid argument, because in 2019 with $1,800 gold and zero federal funds, we watched it go up 450 basis points in a year, the highest, sharpest increase in history. And yet gold is triple from where it was back then, nearly. Again, a convenient argument that is stupid and makes no sense. A couple other things I wanted to talk about. The media made a big deal about the Central Bank of Turkey selling its gold last month. They are quiet right now in the respect that they are now rebuilding their gold reserves, and they've added a whole bunch to their stock. They added 30.7 tons over the previous week, bringing their total gains to 36.4 tons, and reversing this drawdown driven by earlier liquidity operations. So again, they'll tell you when it's convenient. They'll say rising interest rates is bad for gold and silver. Now, that's Gibson's paradox. To a degree, it is. But I would argue that the mistrust or distrust of the dollar, of the Treasury, of our geopolitical aspirations, of our political environment, of all of the irresponsibility we've shown fiscally and monetarily, that people don't want our treasuries right now, and rightfully so. And therefore, as rates continue to move a little bit higher, it doesn't incentivize people to jump back onto the sinking USS dollar.
The big banks were pushing the price down to get themselves out of a massive short squeeze where they were upside down to a survival level. And then once they pushed the price down with the margin hikes, they then were accumulating the metals. And so it is an insider game. We could spend hours on that, but there's no doubt that there was a need to save the banks and a bailout in January on the silver market in New York. They did these margin hikes that they've done many times in the past. Those mechanizations may seem too big to fail or too powerful to beat. I disagree. I think the COMEX and the LBMA markets in the silver space in particular are losing credibility as fast as they're losing actual silver. And I think you're going to see from India to the SPY-MEX to the Shanghai Exchange, whatever you think of those jurisdictions or those governments, you're going to see fair price discovery, and you're going to see a point where supply and demand actually matter again, despite the paper trade. You could get into the technicals on the futures market. There was backwardization. I mean, the current prices were higher than the future prices. That always, for me as a technical trader, signals a higher demand and a supply shortage. And, when you look at the lease rates of silver, I mean, my whole career, they were never above 2%. They went well above 8%. In fact, they were usually less than 1%. So again, whether you're looking at it as a trader, and we're looking at it far more as a long-term play, as a monetary metal, you simply can't print more silver, just like you can't print more gold. And I think the military and industrial demand for silver is going to increase. I mean, silver, as many of your viewers know, is a byproduct. It's mined. It's a byproduct element, and 70% is byproduct mined. You just can't increase the supply with a button. You can't mouse click it. You can only play with the paper prices. And I think whatever we think of this war, which we can get into, or whatever we think of inflation or the deflation, crude at 100, and where's silver going to go longer term? Oil inflation is not the kind of inflation the Fed can fix. It's not the kind of inflation that can be cured. And for each $10 price in oil, inflation raises by 1.01%. But again, the longer inflation deflation discussion comes in for both gold and silver, but silver is going to outpace gold in that next bull run. It doesn't mean gold or silver go in a straight line. You could say silver's broken a lot of hearts, but if you bought it at 15 or 20 or 30, are you not entertained? Even with the pullbacks, if you are a long-term investor, you're not the least bit worried. If you're a trader or trying to get out and get into mining, you have to call it. I think at some point, we always think of gold, though, as the ultimate preservation asset, and silver, as Egon says, is not for widows and orphans. It can break hearts. But when you get to ratios, the gold-silver ratio, I think we're going to see new compression, new record compressions in the next real bull market in gold. And at some point, as we say, you'll make a very good return on silver. We don't like to price target because we're measuring that in fiat currencies. I'd rather measure silver and gold and how many barrels of oil it can buy, how much real estate it can buy, how much assets it can buy, not what the monetary price is in some fiat currency. But $300 silver, $400 silver, these aren't exaggerations. If you're playing the long game and you're not trading, it's just a question of when, because the fundamentals for the monetary system and for paper currencies haven't changed.
Silver is positioned for a potential long-term bull market, with forecasts suggesting price could rise towards $100+ per ounce by 2030, driven by a structural 6-year supply deficit. Industrial demand, especially in photovoltaics, solar panels, AI, and electric vehicles, is causing supply shortages, with analysts anticipating high volatility and strong investment demand in 2026. While high demand supports prices, high cost may fuel volatility. Investors are navigating a perfect storm of high industrial demand alongside potential economic tightening, which can influence silver's role as both a safe haven and industrial asset. What is your stance? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe for more updates. Thanks for watching.